Hello, Candy. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm really good, really good. Nice to have you.
Thank
Um,
you.
so, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties, but that's to be expected. Um, Let me just make sure that I can see the comments here. If you go up to your right hand corner, you'll be able to see the comments. All right, let's see. So let's get started. We are doing Serendipity 85 podcasts, and tell us why we picked this serendipity. And I think it has to do with Sade. But go ahead and you've been having some experiences where you think that she's like a guardian angel, or
Well, I would say yes, but what really it came down to was for any of us, or for anybody, I should say, that knows me, knows that 6 years ago now, I lost my daughter. Her name was Sade. And anyway, it was my mental health journey that I went through after the loss of my child that really, for lack of a better phrase, catapulted me into I guess you could say, career path that I wasn't anticipating. And what I mean by that is I'm still a nurse. Obviously, I've been a nurse for several years. And originally, I had started into going back to school and in the area where I thought I wanted to be an acute care nurse practitioner. So, long story short, obviously I found out once I started that role that that's not what I wanted to do, and that's not where I was meant to be. I found that I was being called to a different area, and that was mental health. So that's what landed me here. And as a homage, or whatever you want to call it, to my daughter, everything was really just kind of serendipitous and really just kind of coming together. And 85 was the year that she was born. So it just kind of evolved from there, and I started my own company, and here I am. She's my muse. In,
so
it,
I know that.
in addition to, sorry, but in
Okay.
addition to, being a veteran and in the mental health realm. So that's really, it's really important.
So that's what's so exciting for me right now, Candy, is that you being a veteran and in the mental health field, and then you are doing your online things and your own business. And briefly go over that again. How's that going? We spoke about it on our first podcast, but go ahead and update us. How are you doing with that?
It's going. Obviously, it's a little bit of a slow process, for licensing and stuff like that. So I'm still currently in the middle of, getting my current state licensures to be able to, practice within the community, et cetera, et cetera. So it's moving forward. We're a lot closer than we were a month ago. As you know, with anything, it takes time, and maybe a little bit more time than it technically should because of this pandemic. We'll leave it at that. And anyway, so it's progressing forward, and here shortly.
Okay. So I really wanted to start talking about some things that interest me, and which kind of corresponded with what you wanted to talk about was, I guess, do you know Gage?
Oh, yes, I do personally know Gage.
Would
That was
you go with, tell us a little bit about Gage? And I'm going to put you on full screen while I share, but go ahead and talk about Gage for a minute and why he's inspiring you at this moment and why we're doing this podcast today.
okay. Well, without going into, potentially violating anybody's medical information. It is out there, and Gage is a person that I had the pleasure of working with for several years within the medical industry, and he is a veteran. And recently, when I was going through and looking for some resources in regards to veterans and everything, I tapped into this particular website that I shared with you, and I don't have it at my fingertips, So I can't specifically state it right now. Anyway, there was a video, about a 2.5, 3 minute video that was done by him where he shared his experience that he was having with some medical issues, and how it was the VA that really helped him and helped, really turn some things around for him. And being that I knew him, it was just very, very inspiring. Something, that we shared together, both being veterans. So that, again, everything just really seems to, be circling around the mental health realm, and veterans, which of course we know that I am a veteran myself. I was in the Army for a few years. So the whole thing is just very, very near and dear to my heart, and then bring us, more closer to date here with everything that we have going on, especially, unfolding in the last several days. Again, it's just, I think it's very important that we try to reach out to as many veterans and family members as possible, and just talk to them and let them know, that there's resources out there. They're not alone, and there's avenues and resources that they can reach out to, even if it's for the first time, or if it's for, a reentry back into, veterans resources. We really need to work baby steps, I guess you could say, in tapping into the community, getting the word out there. The more people that see this, the more people that share information, even if we can just, affect one person's life for the better and get them connected into resources, then that's what we need to do. And it's got to start somewhere. And the only place that it can start really is with us, and within the community and education, because as you know, and anybody that's a veteran knows, 22 a day, unfortunately, is the statistic that commit suicide. And we're even finding, the high increasing of the suicidal rates and everything within law enforcement and the EMS realm as well, which is equally as important. And I've had the opportunity to work, alongside veterans, as well as in the EMS community, and alongside collaboratively with law enforcement. So all of it is very, very important. But my specific aim is really reaching out to the veterans.
Speaking of statistics, can you give us what are some other statistics so that people can be aware of just how of a crisis it is for veterans and mental health and helping veterans, as far as homelessness? So you said that the 22 a day is suicides,
Right.
but you said that's growing. What
Right.
other statistics can you share with us?
Right off the top of my head, I don't have specific statistic numbers. I haven't, looked at anything more current, and I wouldn't want to falsely put any particular numbers out there that are not current. But what I will do, and maybe if at the end of the podcast, in the link or additional information and stuff, if we're able to list some stuff, I'll give you more graphics as far as specific, statistics as far as homelessness and things of that nature, that would really help shed some light on what an issue this is. But startling enough, just going back to the 22 a day, that's 22 too many. And unfortunately.
Yeah, it is heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. And as you know, I work in law enforcement as well, and there is a specific concern for vets. And I'm just going to leave it at that because I don't want to get into that part right now.
Right.
Like, we do have a veterans court and everything like that, but I haven't been seeing too many vets in the jail lately, so I don't know what's going on with that. But moving along now, you had shared the story of Gage, and I went ahead and looked him up, and I watched his video, and he's very inspiring. And what he said that every day is a fight. Every day is a fight. Every day you have to it's a fight just getting out of bed and pushing forward and going with life, because once veterans come back, they really don't know how to fit into society. A lot of them just keep going back for more terms, because they come back here and it's just a culture shock again. It's a culture shock. So it's really concerning with the Afghanistan issue and the crisis in Kabul. And, it's breaking my heart, because look, how many people served over there and spent, a great part of their life over there, helping to serve our country, and then just to see it be thrown all away. Can you speak to that and give some of our people, not only the vets, but the concerned family members and friends of the vets, and let us know what's going on with that?
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm not currently actively serving. I haven't for several years. And other than, what we're seeing or not seeing in the news, I mean, you can pretty much see how it's unfolding in front of your eyes, but I'm going to kind of take it back a little bit further, and let's go back and revisit, if you will, for a minute, the horrible treatment that our country gave to our returning Vietnam veterans. I don't think I really need to go too in depth to it. I think pretty much everybody, or I hope everybody, remembers how dastardly they were treated upon coming home, which is just incomprehensible to me, because these are people that, not only were they drafted, and maybe never had a desire or want to serve their country, but those who willingly signed up, unfortunately, those who gave the ultimate sacrifice, and may they all rest in peace. But going back to the ones that had the opportunity to return, so those veterans to be treated the way they were, even family members, I'm sure, growing up, I was a little bit too young at the time to really firsthand experience that. But knowing what we've learned through history about how horribly they were treated upon returning, name calling, and, denial and stuff like that, you can somewhat equate that to what's being experienced today. And there could be veterans who've returned, who maybe even some active duty, that potentially are feeling, what was this 20-year fight for? What did we do? What did we accomplish? And why did so many of our veterans, and again, may they all rest in peace because of that ultimate sacrifice that they paid. But what was it for? Because it all seems to be unfolding. And again, everybody's going to have a different viewpoint. But if you look at it from one aspect, we spent 20 years working to build up their, helping to build up their military and train them and educate them and everything, so that they could eventually individually stand on their own, and defend, their country, their countrymen and women. And then what appears, and again, I have to put that disclaimer in there, what appears, because we're not there firsthand. We can only go with what's being reported and what is and isn't being shown. But, what was it all for, with, those countrymen giving up their country so easily? And again, I can't go into specifics. I don't claim to be an expert in what's going on in Afghanistan. But as a veteran, it causes me to think, wow, what did we fight for? I can go back to, the era of when I was in the military, and that was, Operation, Desert Storm, back in that time frame. And I mean, it even has me questioning, wow, what was my service for, So I could easily see what potentially any active duty military and veterans nowadays could potentially be having that question, or even family members. They may be even, they may be feeling fear. They may be feeling rage and anger. And again, questioning, especially, obviously it's all voluntary because we haven't had the draft for many, many years, but questioning why, what was my service for? What did I accomplish? What did we as a country accomplish? So that's a very real reality right now.
Well, just myself, when I saw what was happening, I thought it was traumatizing. It's traumatizing our country yet again. And I can almost feel like all of the sadness and the frustration on a global level. You know what I mean? It's just so heartbreaking. Um, because I know a lot of people go over there with pride, and then once they get there, they're like, "Oh my God!" They see you know, they see their friends and their partners and their and compadres getting, you know, losing their lives, and then they come back and they feel, you know, they don't even feel like they're the lucky ones. You know, they come back without their friends,
Right.
and
And that's very, very true. And, one of the things that, for anybody potentially, that has at any point in time in the last 20 years served over there and experienced and witnessed the loss firsthand of their comrades, this could actually, potentially, not that it will, but it could potentially, put some veterans into, survivor guilt, you know, again,
Mhm.
questioning, well, what did I fight for? What did I lose my, comrades for? Family members equally, as well can, have those same thoughts and fears about, why did I lose my son? Why did I lose my brother? What was it that my husband died for? Ultimately, I know we know what they died for, because when we go into the military, that's one of the things, as we sign as the saying goes, when we sign the dotted line, the blank check, which could possibly be paid with our life. And we full-heartedly understand that and know that when we commit. But then again, these circumstances of what we've got going on in the world right now, it could easily cause someone to say, what was it all for?
Well, what have you talked to anyone recently that has experienced some hardship because of the crisis in Kabul, or have you gotten in any enlightenment or indication as to what to expect out of this? You being in the mental health field, working with veterans.
Um, I have not specifically thus far. Again, a lot of these events are really just, unfolding this week. I have not, one-on-one worked with anybody as far as veterans that are, experiencing anything. But that doesn't mean that there aren't people out there have already not, or that have already experienced or come in contact or are starting to see, veterans experiencing potentially some of these issues. Um, uh, I've not personally been in contact with anybody from like the Veterans Crisis Line. And again, a lot of this information, you got to remember, obviously, is, protected health information. So, it's not like, if I was to call and, try and, find that information out. I mean, that's just really, really, very private information. But then again, you have to stop and think about, how many of those veterans and or family members, again, are out there maybe suffering in silence,
Hmm.
are maybe afraid to even reach out, don't know that they really even have resources to reach out to. I mean, and maybe they had an issue where maybe previously they've tried to reach out to resources in the past and maybe it wasn't a very great experience.
Right.
So they've thrown their hands up in the air and said, well, I'm
Yeah.
not going to ever do that again. Um, but, if I could
Well,
implore
I
one
can
thing.
tell you, I can tell you from experience that um, people, you know, even as much as people with PTSD are supposed to talk about it, they don't want to. They are suffering in silence.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
no, absolutely. I mean, because people, that suffer from PTSD, depending on what the situation is that caused the PTSD, they do have a tendency sometimes to suffer in silence because sometimes it could potentially lead them to question, am I really seeing what I'm seeing? did I really experience that? Did I really go through that? I mean, the mind's a powerful thing. And, sometimes, these situations can cause you to question your experience in general about, whether you actually experienced it or not. But then again, they're also faced with, well, if I do talk about it, are people going to even believe me? Or some of
Right.
the things that I've seen or experienced, are they so astronomical that people who've not ever walked in those kind of shoes would ever be able to understand what it was that a veteran has experienced? Because I mean, there's different types of trauma, there's different type of experience, at all different levels. And the experience obviously is very individualized based on the individual.
Well, I spoke to someone today, and whose husband served in Afghanistan, and I said, "What did he say? What is his thoughts right now?" And the one thing that she said was, "Sure, was the last 20 years or so a big waste?" And I said, "Well, yeah, we're all thinking that, but what else?" And she said, basically, how many the people that are over there that helped them, the Afghanis that helped with translation,
Yeah.
and the friendlies, and the people
Yeah.
that are now going to be terrorized and killed and whatever, they are still now worrying about those people over there. So now you've got a situation where the people where now the soldiers are like, what do I do? What do I do? What can you do? And
Right.
so it must be pretty traumatic. And as like you said, as it's unfolding, we'll see some more, and we'll talk about this again. But I wanted to for the people that are watching that know a veteran, or family members, or whatever, let's get the word out and share it, because you had said we really need to get this information out. So let's start from the beginning, and let's go over what happens when a veteran actually comes back, and describe that culture shock. And then like they're confused when they come back, and they have guilt, like you were saying. Let's talk about the signs and symptoms of some of the mental health, where the mental health issues can start once they come back, and so people can understand and help to recognize.
Well,
Can you?
yeah, let me, I kind of I have a couple of little notes here, and I want to kind of go, piece by piece, as far as, first I want to start with getting, the Veterans Crisis Line phone number out there, for those that may be looking for a resource and just haven't picked up the phone to make that choice yet, and make that call. The Veterans Crisis Line number is 800-273 8255, and you would press option number 1. So that's the crisis line. If you are
800.
273 8255, and you'd press option number 1. So if there's anybody out there, that feels like maybe, they're in crisis, or they don't know if they're in crisis, they don't know where to turn, maybe they've got some thoughts, they've got some feelings, they just, are just in a state of unsureness, reach out and call that number.
800-275. I had to turn on a light.
800-273-8255, option number 1. They would press option number 1. That's first and foremost. And, that's at least a place to start. It doesn't matter where you start, as long as you reach out and you start somewhere.
Is that it? Because I have limited light source right here. That's why I can barely see.
No, that's incorrect. It's 800-273-8255, option number 1.
Okay. Is that good?
Yeah.
Option one. Option one.
Yeah, option one.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's, that's an easily accessible, 800 number. If they're, not in a place where they feel they can or have the ability to pick up a phone and reach out on that crisis line, maybe they're more into, maybe Googling or going to websites on their phone, they don't know where to begin. There's always www.veteranscrisisline.net. So that's another resource as well. And for those that do happen to, go on the internet, whether it be from a computer, phone, whatever. I did happen to, come across this thing today when again, looking at resources, because I'm always looking for different resources to be able to pass information on to people. For those that go on to YouTube, I came across a gentleman who's a United States Marine Corps vet, and his name is Paul Corbett. Corbett. And he does a lot of different YouTube podcasts also in regards to veterans resources and everything. So I want to share his information and get it out there. And you can, find him on YouTube just by, putting in his name, and I'm sure it's going to bring it up. You can also find him by pound the sit rep. Which is # the, and then capital SITREP. And that's veterans, again, veterans and family members. And the snippet that I happened to come across for him today was he was talking about the Afghanistan issues that are going on, and he's going to be doing podcasts as well. Again, this is really just to get the word out and start sharing names of people, with different, things of information going on, so that people realize that there's a multitude of resources. If you just start looking, if you just take that first step and you start looking, there's also, another number for anybody, family member and or veterans, again, who are struggling with the information as far as, what's going on in this whole Afghanistan thing. There's a 877 number, and you can call this number and discuss things with them. And again, the number is 877 WAR, WAR, VETS, VETS. So, again, those are just some ways to reach out. And obviously, being here in Las Vegas, we've got, the Las Vegas VA Medical Center that's here. We've got the vet centers. There's 2 vet centers here within Las Vegas. So again, if you just Google anything having to do with the VA, it's going to bring you up some information and give you the opportunity to, go to a website and find out where you could at least make that initial step, whether it be on the phone or whether it be in person, just by some of that information that I gave you. And, just for friends and family members of veterans, and you might be questioning, well, are they going through anything? Are they, suffering in silence? What are some of the signs and symptoms of things that, may potentially be, maybe visible, but maybe I'm just not picking up on them because, maybe it's just not in the forethought of my mind. If you know of anybody that just starts seeming to be withdrawing from life, they're not as social as they normally are. Maybe you notice that they're sleeping more or not sleeping, and they typically do normally sleep. If you find that they're avoiding situations, maybe, and I understand we have to, take, COVID into, account as far as, limited movement and exposures with people right now in the community. But, anything that's out of the norm for the person's normal day to day, just have a have a sixth sense about it, so to speak. Look for these different signs and symptoms, and try and talk with, these people, these friends, families, loved ones. If you're starting to notice these kind of things, they may become very irritable. They may become obviously very moody. Again, they may be withdrawing. They may be hypervigilant. These types of things can potentially, not always, but they could potentially trigger some kinds of nightmares. They could trigger, some types of, flashbacks. Maybe there's some that are, suffering in silence out there with PTSD that's not been diagnosed, and they've not reached out for any type of help. But maybe, friends or family members are noticing some of these types of behaviors, I guess you could say. So don't be afraid to talk to people about it. Again, you may get shuttered off. You may get, I'm fine. Don't worry about me. But always have that in the back of your mind, because again, there are so many out there that do suffer in silence, and they, reach out to your community. There's so many different places, just for, for veterans and everything alike, whether it be, your veteran of foreign wars. Even local businesses. I can specifically think of a local business, here in Vegas that I'm going to, give a quick plug to, I guess you could say. I've never personally been there, but I know that it's veteran owned, and it's a wonderful, hangout for veterans. And that's the Leatherneck Club here in Las Vegas.
Oh, okay.
And again, it's great for getting to, for veterans and people, family members and stuff, to get to know other veterans, networking. I can't speak.
The Leatherneck Club.
Yeah, I can't, I can't speak enough about it, getting out there and networking. And I thought I originally had the information, in regards to it pulled up on my phone, but somehow I had moved away from it. So let me just pull the information up real quick. Again, it's called the Leatherneck Club. It's here in Las Vegas. Again, veteran owned. It's a casual venue offering, they offer American Grill fare and drinks, with walls lined with military memorabilia. And
wow,
that is kind of an atmosphere that veterans could be drawn to, even if you're afraid to venture out. If you feel that you need to surround yourself with like-minded people that understand the culture of which you've come from as far as the military, this could potentially be it. And they're located at 4360 West Spring Mountain Road here in Las Vegas. So again, granted, it's a veteran-owned business here within the community, but the important thing is it's a place where like-minded individuals, cultured individuals, if you're looking for somewhere, you're looking for a way to connect, that could be one of the easiest ways to connect. Because look how easily people can connect over, just breaking bread with one another.
Well, how important is it for veterans to connect with other veterans?
It's absolutely important. It's absolutely important for veterans, because again, if you've not experienced the military life, one, you may have difficulty, unless maybe you work for the military Department of Defense, you may have difficulty understanding the terminology, the language. So being able to connect with people that understand the language and, understand how the military works to really, for lack of a better phrase, break you down and build you up for unity, so that you can, work together collaboratively as a very strong unit, a very strong team, in the unfortunate times of war. It's a mindset, it's a way of life, such as, anything as far as our culture, being in the military, that's an individual culture. So it's very important for people to connect, and stay connected to their culture. Even if you take a look at, different ethnicities, Italian culture, Hispanic culture, it's very, very important to stay connected. Indian culture, to stay connected to your cultures, because it's a base of commonality. And it can be like a coming home, reconnecting with that culture. And it literally, and I don't mean to sound cliche, but if you stop and you think about, the brotherhoods and, the band of brothers and things like that, those are words and phrases that have real meaning when it comes to active duty as well as veterans. And it's extremely important. I can't stress that enough.
Well, speaking from experience, I know that not everybody wants to remember it. Not everybody wants to associate with it. Some people want to directly disconnect from anything having to do with it. They're just trying to find a little sense of belonging, and a little sense of safety, and a little sense of belonging in somewhat anything outside of that. What advice do you have for those kind of people that are just trying to forget about those years and all that trauma? It doesn't seem like it can be done, but maybe just maybe it can. I mean, what do you have to say about that?
Well, I mean, people may want to forget their association with it, and there's nothing wrong with that, and we shouldn't attach any type of stigma to those who want to forget it for whatever their reasons are. Their reasons are individual, and their reasons are their own. What I would have to say to that, if that's what a person wants, then absolutely, you do you, and you do what's best for you. But if you're finding that you're haunted by it, or you can't forget it, you need to, and this is going on for, periods of time, long periods of time. And maybe if you have an opportunity to self-reflect and see about, I'm trying so hard to forget this period of time. Number one, am I forgetting it? Number two, am I forgetting it in a healthy manner? And am I developing help? Do I have the healthy coping mechanisms to be able to put this behind me? Some people do, and some people can come by it naturally, and some people just ease away from it. And, it was a period of time, and, they don't dwell on it. They don't remember it. They don't speak fondly of it. They don't speak of it at all. And again, that's fine. But if you are struggling to be able to do that, and that that's what you want to do, then I say, wherever you can get the help, reach out, whether it's, with some type of counseling within the community, whatever it is for you that's going to help. It doesn't matter. It doesn't necessarily have to be with the VA, especially if you're trying to maybe forget your military years. Reach out to a clergy member, reach out to a family member, reach out to a friend, reach out to a neighbor, reach out. That is the most important thing right there. Despite the reason you need to reach out, again, even if it's just for forgetting, or if it's for remembering, or help, or, for help to get through whatever the situation is, reach out to somebody, because you just know. And you never know, it might be a fellow veteran that helps you forget it. If that makes sense. That kind of sounds like a contradiction in terms. But and again, the experience is going to be individual for everybody. But the point I want people to take away from here is reach out. Don't suffer in silence, regardless of what the suffering is. But just know that there's a lot of resources, and there's, there are a lot of things out there that can be useful and beneficial for you. You just need to reach out.
So that's some very interesting and helpful information. one of the things that we wanted to accomplish in this podcast is when things spiral down and they get so bad, the statistics of 22 veterans committing suicide a day, that's staggering. That is so staggering.
Mhm.
And what is your training for that? Are we trying to prevent that? Is it something we can prevent? Is there something we can look for? Is there anything that we can do to stop this?
Yes, I mean, that's one of the focuses of, obviously, your education in school, and as you go through, your clinicals and everything, and depending on, where you work, different places have, different types of programs that, number one, teach employees and everything how to de-escalate situations, whether it be, verbal de-escalation, and or, physical de-escalation of a situation. Obviously, if you don't have the proper training, don't attempt it. You know, a lot of people have the misconception that if they were to broach the subject of suicide with somebody, that it's going to convince that person that they need to commit suicide. That, is typically a myth. Actually, it really can somewhat, although uncomfortable, it can be somewhat of an icebreaker, to potentially open the door to get them to talk about it. We learn how to recognize signs and symptoms, of people that may be contemplating suicide. Just because somebody doesn't come out and say, I'm suicidal, or I'm going to commit suicide, or make the actual attempt, it doesn't mean that they're not going to. Again, that whole suffering in silence. There are those that, that have the suicidal ideations and reach out for help. There are those who have them and don't. There are those who have made attempts on their lives unsuccessfully, and unfortunately way too many successfully. We get, we learn how to recognize signs and symptoms, what type of people are at risk. Elderly white males are known to be at risk. If people have a substance abuse, they're in a higher risk category. If they have any, obviously, mental health diagnoses and or underlying mental health illnesses that have not even been diagnosed, obviously they're at a higher risk. I mean, so we could probably spend a whole entire hour, talking about different risk factors. But again, some of the things that, I touched base on, if you know somebody to be of a certain way and have, specific behaviors, as far as, they're active in their community, they're active in their family, whatever the situation may be, and you find that all of a sudden they're withdrawing from their family, they are turning down social invitations, which normally this person never turns down social invitations, despite COVID. They're irritable, they're sleeping all the time, or they're not sleeping anymore. And typically, they're, a very healthy individual. Let me just give you an example. Say, for instance, a person, not necessarily just a veteran, but a person, say they're very much into health. Do they go to the gym religiously, 4 times a week, or, they eat healthy, whatever it is, and all of a sudden, somebody, a friend, a family member, husband, wife, brother, sister, whatever, notices now that they're deviating. No, I'm going to go to the gym on another day, or yeah, no, I'm just not feeling up to it. And now, 2 or 3 weeks have gone by. I'm not saying that everybody who, goes through those moments is suicidal, but these are some of the small things that we tend to not pick up on. Somebody who's got a mental health diagnosis, and their behaviors are just different than what say, for instance, they start giving away all of their belongings. Again, they're, withdrawing from life socially. These are some types of behaviors that could potentially be indicators that somebody may be struggling with something, and they could be leaning towards potentially having suicidal ideations. So being able to understand and pick up on the slightest signs, because again, not everybody's going to walk up to their brother, sister, their mother, their husband, their wife and say, you know what, I'm suicidal. I'm thinking about, ending it. Yeah, there's some that do that, but, a good portion do not. Just be aware and, just take the time to, do your own research, find your own information on, what the vast majority of signs and symptoms, that could potentially indicate that somebody is, again, suffering in silence and maybe suicidal. It's shown that those who have a first degree relative, mom, dad, aunt, uncle, grandma, grandpa, first degree relative that have a mental health illness diagnosed and or signs and symptoms despite being diagnosed, they're at a higher risk of potentially, becoming a substance abuser themselves or having, a mental illness themselves. So just knowing these things and knowing the signs and symptoms and educate and talk about it.
Well, it's my experience that, and it could be, it doesn't have to be veterans. It can just be anybody with a mental health issue.
Right.
When they start having a lot of relationship problems, or they lose their jobs,
Right.
When they start having these life crises, okay?
Yeah, it's all about understanding the triggers. And daily life can be a trigger, especially now with the time. And you're right, it doesn't have to be just veteran. It can be anybody. It could be a coworker. Again, I'm not going to turn this into a political fest, but I am going to touch on, take a look at what the medical field. I'm not going to just specifically say nurses. I'm going to say the medical field in general, because, it's EMS workers, it is doctors, it's nurses, it's CNAs, it's health techs, it's everybody, it's x-ray technicians, it's everybody that is within healthcare, and all of these individual entities that are now mandating vaccines for their employees. This is another thing that could add to, people becoming depressed, people becoming anxious, oh my God, say for instance, a person has made an individual choice to not get vaccinated. That's their own personal choice. We live in a free country, despite what people think. We live in a free country, and that is everybody's individual choice as Americans. But now say you're working for a company that is mandating people get vaccinated. This can create an entire mental health realm for individuals to go through. And, you're not immune just because you're a doctor. You're not immune just because you're a nurse. All of these healthcare workers, these frontline workers, everybody that's considered essential is being thrown into this realm, and this can cause extreme increase in anxiety, and it can put them at risk.
Right. So basically, okay, so let's get back to the veterans. When you're in a fight or flight mode and you're in war and it's you against them, and you're, something happens where something turns on to where you can be, you got that killer mode going, killer. You come home to a society that doesn't have those triggers, that just, goes through life, hee-haw. And you don't realize what you do can trigger. We're talking about vets now. You don't realize what you do might trigger someone to get to the edge. So in my experiences, if somebody gets pushed to the edge, and that is to where, and then they're like, that coping mechanism is it's not there, because they've learned how to just end a life. When you get to a point where you're so afraid, for instance, if you're going to lose your relationship, you're going to lose your job, you're going to lose your home, you're going to lose everything, it might take you back to the moment of war where you're going to lose your life. What do? Kill that, kill. It's either you kill or I get killed. Does that make any sense? Am I making any sense to where you get to that point where it's either live or die, live or die, live or die?
Absolutely. Obviously in wartime, one of the unfortunate risks of it is people's lives, and when we are in a state of war, it's about, a multitude of things. It's about protecting our lives as soldiers. It's about protecting our comrades' lives, those who are, soldiers right next to us. It's about protecting civilians, other people, of other countries, obviously, it's protection mode. It's fight or flight. It's, fight or be killed. And that's, what our body, our response, our sympathetic response gears us up for. And when you live during war, especially when you're on the front lines, and or anywhere close, or in the vicinity of, the potential of having to protect your life, another person's life, whether it be civilian, another countryman or whatever, you've always got that, that hypervigilance, because like you said, it's them or it's us type thing. And you can go on so long living in that fight or flight response mode that, number one, that's all you know. Number two, that is the only way you know how to function. So to bring yourself back from that, and transition into a society, so to speak, whether you're still active duty, or, leaving the military altogether, that can be a hard transition. Obviously, and I'm not gonna pinpoint this, but it could be just as hard on a veteran who only served a year, unfortunately got hurt and got out, as it is for somebody maybe who has served 25 years and gotten out and is now making the transition. So I don't mean to say that time is the definitive factor on how you will adjust or won't adjust. But again, it's a lifestyle. And when you live that kind of lifestyle, say, for instance, you have an individual who, they've tried to come back to the States after, serving a tour or two, and their transition doesn't happen successfully. And they're like, I got to get out of here. I'm re-signing back up. I'm going back over there because that's how I knew how to exist. You have a lot of that, and that's a coping mechanism. That is, that can be an escape, so to speak, because you're putting a person back to what they're familiar with. It's no different than, I'm going to step away from a veteran for a minute. It's no different than those who have maybe spent multiple years within the prison system. They get out and they try to reintegrate back into society. If they don't have the resources and the training and the role model and those that are willing to mentor them and help get them reintegrated back into society, then their risk of becoming non-integratable is huge.
Yes.
So
and that's
any aspect of life.
That's what I'm getting at, is being non-integratable. So now you're trying to mix water and oil. And so if you're trying to be in a relationship, or if you're trying to rebuild or integrate, it's like a wolf integrating with the sheep. And it's just like, I can't explain it. I just know that it gets to a point for suicide suicide, to where it's like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore.
Right. Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, everybody's bottom is going to be different. Some people's
And you mean like rock bottom?
Yeah,
Is that when suicide happens when they finally hit the rock?
Not necessarily. No. I mean, again, everybody's threshold is going to be different. It all depends on their coping mechanisms. Healthy, maladaptive, unhealthy. It depends on their support network. A person's support network is so vitally important. And I don't just mean familial, because there's people out there that have no family or live in a state where none of their family is close to them, friends, co-workers, community resources. Those are strong networks. And if you don't have a strong support system, then you are more easily or at a higher risk to fall through the crack. So, highlighting the fact that having support, and if you don't have support, know where to at least try to reach out, reach out. That's why I say reach out somewhere. I don't care if it's, walking up to the door of a church and saying, I don't know what direction to go. You know what I'm saying? Take that step and walk to that door.
So what I'm getting and from my experience is it's so important to have the network. It's like a web that you build around you, that helps you integrate.
Networking.
A network. You call it networking.
Networking.
And if somebody finds a way that works for them, and this is a message, who are we to say, don't do that, don't do this, don't talk to that person, don't talk to this person? Can we put pressure and demands and things on veterans or whoever and if we try to cut them off from those various networks, aren't we harming them? I mean, do you know what I mean? Like say so you get in these relationships with people and then you start saying, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. We're just pushing them into a corner now to where they have lost those coping mechanisms and the people and the things that they've coped with. We're trying to take those away because we don't like it. Aren't we pushing them back in a corner? And is that's where the edge is? Do you know what I'm saying? So we need to be more lenient. We need to be more forgiving. We need to be more accepting of their coping skills, even if we're not in alignment or agreement.
We need to be understanding of their coping skills. We need to obviously be able to recognize healthy and unhealthy coping skills. We need to basically start with an understanding of, well, why does that person have that particular coping skill? Is that because that's all they were able to hold on to for the 17 years that they were in the military? And Lord only knows how many years or how many tours they did somewhere. So we need to be understanding of it. And rather than the don't, how about, is that maybe the most effective way to cope with it? Or how about we look at other ways of maybe that might be more beneficial? Or how about maybe you stop and think about, maybe this person isn't the best influence. Maybe you might want to consider maybe looking for a different influential person. I mean, obviously anytime, even, and I'm not relating people, I'm not relating veterans, and I'm not relating people to toddlers, but I'm saying, as an example, every time we look at that 3-year-old and we say, don't do that, what do? They do it. So
exactly. Point given.
Look at how we're approaching it. But I think before we approach it, stop and take a moment to make the effort to understand why it is the way they are, and then take it from there.
Exactly. And and I keep saying from my experience, because I do have some experience, and I'm sure what I've been through. And So it's like a clash of wills. And with a person that has a mental health issue with PTSD, depression, anxiety, and things like that, and then and clashes with somebody who is just easygoing, and um, they can't really understand each other. But the point, and we were talking in our first podcast about not judging and trying to understand, trying to be open-minded, and about coping skills. It really comes down to, like you said, understanding and not judging, and just letting people be who they need to be without condemning and things like that. It's so important. It's really important. But
Yeah, but you know what? Let me add something to that. That doesn't mean that allowing them. No, that's kind of a bad
boundaries.
way.
We talked about boundaries.
Yeah, I mean, that there's got to be the boundaries, and obviously, getting rid of stigma, and stereotyping, that needs to go away as well. The person who is using alcohol to cope, do we want to just be like, okay, maybe that's not the best, thing to be using in order to cope? How about we attempt to try and develop some more healthy coping mechanisms? But again, that person has to want help. First and foremost, you cannot help somebody if they don't want the help. You can, ride that Ferris wheel around and around and around, but if they are not accepting of the help, they are not willing to put in the work for the help in order to get the benefits, then you know what? Okay, we have to get to a point where we are, all right, this is your choice. You are an adult. I've educated you. I've given you all the information we can. We've reached out. We've tried this. We've tried that. You choose to do this. You're an adult. You have the right to make poor decisions. But I also have the right to say I'm no longer going to be a part of this. So it's a setting of the boundary. If you get to a point where you see that obviously nothing is working, I hate to state give up on somebody. We don't ever want to give up on somebody, but we have to understand where there may come a point in time where you have to just let them be, if that's the choice that they're making, because they have the right to make that choice. We always want to err on the side of good judgment, but we have to understand that they have the right to make that poor decision. It's like somebody, I'm just going to use somebody with a cancer diagnosis. They have the right, after being given all of the pros and cons of seeking treatment and not seeking treatment, they have that right to say, I don't want treatment. I'm just going to live with it. It is what it is. And I'm just going to do whatever. That may not be what we want for them, but it's not about what we want for them. They have to want it as well. We can't make them want it. And they have the right to make those decisions as adults. And we have to support them in that decision, but yet tell them, if you ever change your mind or you ever decide you want to seek that help or you want to go down this road, this treatment, whatever the case may be, just know that I'm here for you and I support you, regardless of what your decision is. But I am going to draw a line of boundaries, and I'm not going to enable what I perceive to be the poor behavior.
Very, very well said. Very well said. And
just because somebody's got a mental illness, diagnosed or undiagnosed, it does not mean they are less than worthy of our support, our care, and our resources.
Exactly. Now, one of the things that happens is we get pulled into it. Okay, and it's almost like we have to walk in their shoes to understand it.
Right.
And
it's got to be shoes, you can't understand it Unless you walk that person's shoes, you can't understand it. If you have not gone to war and been on that front line and had to, unfortunately, maybe make the decision to take somebody's life to save your own, or take somebody's life to save 50 of your coworkers, your other soldiers, you have no clue what that's like. You have no idea what that person who's been diagnosed with cancer is going through while they go through their chemo treatments, if that's what they choose to do. You have to physically walk those shoes. You can sympathize with somebody all you want, but you do not. And that's one of the most pivotal points that I learned as a nurse going through my child's journey with her on her medical journey. I always, I thought as a nurse, oh no, I empathize with them. I understand exactly what they're going through. It wasn't until I walked that medical journey with her, saw the good and the bad, and then unfortunately had to be the one to make the decision, to take her off of life support. That was the one time where I was like, you know what, all these years I've thought that I understood what these people are going through, having to make these decisions. No, it wasn't until this defining moment that I learned what it's like, because I am walking in their shoes. So truly, unless you've walked somebody's shoes, and again, I know it sounds cliche, and I know we see memes out there about it all the time, but unless you've walked that person's shoes, you have absolutely no clue. You have no idea what it's like to walk the daily journey of somebody with multiple sclerosis who gets up every day in pain, but yet gets up, dresses up, and shows up and is present in whatever it is that they're able to do. We have no clue. I have absolutely no clue. I have no clue what it's like to sit there and receive that diagnosis of, you have breast cancer, or you have colon cancer, or anything of the nature, or you're bipolar, or being, after significant diagnosis, significant testing, that one needs to go through in order to really be given these, hard medical diagnoses, whether it be physical and or mental. Unless you're sitting there and you're the one receiving that information, you have no clue. You can think you have a clue, but you have no clue.
So what is the message that we want to wrap it up with?
Don't suffer in silence. It doesn't matter where you reach out, just reach out. Take that first step. That's the message right there. Don't suffer in silence. Speak up, reach out, take that first step, regardless of what it is. And it doesn't matter if you're feeling suicidal, or if you just finally get to the point where you want to stop abusing substances, whatever that substance may be. It could be prescription drugs, it could be over-the-counter drugs, it could be illegal substances, it could be legal substances, whatever. Reach out. Don't suffer in silence. But the biggest one that people need to take away is stop the stereotyping and stop the stigma.
Exactly. And where does enabling come in? What is your thoughts on enabling and boundaries? And isn't that the kind of like along the same enabling and boundaries? It's a delicate balance, isn't it?
It's a very delicate balance. If you're going to set a boundary, you have to hold tight to that boundary, because a person, you set a boundary, and this goes with anything, and again, number one, we're all human. So obviously we are all fallible. Bottom line, there is not a single person on this earth that is perfect. So a lot of it has to do with setting the boundary, making your boundaries clear, and being consistent. And when that boundary is violated, crossed, whatever terminology you want to use, that other person who has violated that boundary, they need to understand the consequences. They need to experience the consequence. Like, say for instance, you do this, I'm going to do that. It's no different than rearing our children. It's rearing a person, so to speak. It takes a village, obviously. I mean, if you tell your child, your 16-year-old, you violate your curfew again, I'm taking away the keys to your car and I'm canceling your insurance. Whatever the circumstances are, if you say it, you got to do it, because the minute you don't do it, they're going to be like, whatever, yeah, I've heard that one 20 times. I mean, and it's true in anything. You can say that to your own self. You can give your own self boundaries of, if, here's another example. If my work violates my personal belief of this yet again, then I'm going to do this. Whatever the situation is, you can apply it to anything, set the boundary, set boundary with neighbors. This neighbor, next door, and this is, hypothetical, every Friday and Saturday night, they're playing their music, until 2:30 in the morning. Well, most places, until 11 o'clock or whatever that is, know what the actual, acceptances and stuff are. But if you're going to set the boundary, and you're going to say, oh, I'm going to call the cops on them, and you never call the cops on them, or whatever the situation is, again, these are just hypothetical, then, stop lying to yourself and quit telling yourself that you're going to finally put your foot down and do something about it, because obviously you're not. But again, everybody's threshold is different. My threshold on certain things may be a lot lower than maybe your threshold, or vice versa. My threshold, I may be more tolerable of some things because of my experiences or whatever, or my coping abilities, than your tolerance level is. So everybody's level is going to be different. But if you're going to set a boundary, and somebody's going to violate that boundary, and you want them to not do it again, then they have to suffer the consequence of it.
What about the wives that are waiting at home for their soldiers to come back, and then when they come back, it's like, oh my God, I don't know this person.
That is definitely a reality that can happen. Again, it's all about learning how to cope, and reach out for help. Reach out to other spouses, male and female. Reach out to other spouses that have experienced, and been successful in the transition. Reach out to them, talk to them, ask them, what worked for you? How did you deal with this? What, you're going to learn. It's like, as we go up, we grow up in school. Let's take it, for example, somebody who, plays sports. You have a lot of mentors, you have a lot of coaches, you take a little bit of, a little piece of something from everybody, and you find what works well for you and what doesn't work for you, and apply those things that work well. Use those skills or that information, that advice that you gain from other people, and find what works and find what doesn't. You've got to find that balance. It's like seeing patients. Patients are not cookie cutter. Not everybody's going to present the same way. It's like, as a matter of fact, somebody said to me today, take your experiences, your life experiences, your work experiences, your educational experiences, and apply that in your situations, and have faith in yourself that you have the ability and the resources within yourself to get through the situation. Even if it's in seeing a patient, draw with on your own knowledge base, but yet understand that you have resources out there, know who and what your resources are, and utilize them without having fear that you may look stupid. It's not about looking stupid. It's about finding the best way to do something, to approach something, so that maybe you can not only learn something, but somebody's going to benefit from what you have to share or by the way that you're taking care of them. You know, and
Well,
you know,
I can.
let me touch base really quick on one thing about mental health. Too many people have the delusion, for lack of a better phrase, but have the conception or perception, let's say perception, that medication is what's going to cure it. Medication does not cure the mental illness. Medications help to manage the symptoms, a physical illness as well as mental illness. You need to get to the bottom of what's causing it. When it comes to mental health, you need to find out why things are the way they are. Is it genetic? Is it, you know, life experiences, the trauma, the this, the that, whatever it is? You need to get to the bottom of it. And the only way you're going to get to the bottom of it is by reaching out for help. And there's different therapy modalities, you know, there's all different types of therapies to try and find what is going to work best based on your symptomology that you've got going on. So medications are not going to cure it. They're going to help manage the symptoms. You need to get to the root of what the problem is. And that means being able or willing to put in the work and look into it and dive a little bit deeper.
Well, I can tell you that the medications just numb a person out, and they make them. I can tell you from experience that people don't trust a lot of the healthcare workers, that they don't understand. Like you were saying, they're just like a robot, just answering, nodding their head. Okay, well, we'll see you the next time. And they walk away from there not feeling any satisfaction or even help. Like they don't want, you know, they don't even want to do it. So they seek, you know, like I said, they suffer in silence, or they just find alternate ways to numb it or to distract themselves from those issues. But also I wanted to say that social media is also another distractant, to where you're not getting a personal in-depth conversation to where you can speak candidly in person. And to me, that helps the most. Trusting in someone and speaking candidly. COVID especially has separated us. We've all just kind of are relying on social media, and it's very I don't know, generic. It's just funny. It's just games. It's not real life. And people need to understand that social media is not the answer. Sitting all alone in life all day in and day out on social media, the minute you turn that off and go to your lonely existence, that's real, that's reality. So I'm going to say social media is not the answer. Getting distracted with porn is not the answer. Alcohol is not the answer. Drug abuse is not the answer. The answer is reaching out to people who have a sincere interest and that really want to help you and really want to talk and really want to see you prosper and get ahead. Do you know what I mean? And those people, you know, due to COVID, is there a lot more suicides because of COVID? Because you're not going to get the satisfaction from this virtual reality.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you know, there's definitely been an increase in mental health issues, obviously, since the whole COVID thing. And I'm going to speak back to, you know, obviously last year when I was, you know, still in school and attending clinicals and stuff like that. And one of the most biggest reality checks to me was the age of the patients that we were starting to see that were starting to have underlying mental health issues such as depression and increased anxiety and stuff. And I want to say the youngest person that I saw was at the age of 6 years old. And that to me, especially having young granddaughters, you know, right in that, you know, that age frame, you know, that to me is, I can't even think of the word, honestly. It just blows
It's
me away.
appalling. It's appalling.
Yeah, it is absolutely, it's absolutely appalling. It's incomprehensible. But one of the things that I made a promise to myself, knowing that I was going the route to eventually become a mental health provider, was not, going back to the thing about the medications. Obviously, medications help with the symptomology. They're not the cure, with the mental health diagnoses. I made a promise to myself, the type of provider that I wanted to be. And one of the things that I make sure to address with patients that I start to see is, I want to clarify very early up front, what are your goals? Number one, what are your goals as far as any kind of treatment? What are you open up to? Are you looking to start medications? Are you looking just to be able to be referred to a resource just for some counseling? What is it that they want? And, starting with that, because you got to find out what it is that they want, what they're willing to do, and take it from there. Don't just be the kind of provider where all you do is, medication, medication, medication. Because not everybody wants medication. Other people want to try and develop those healthy coping mechanisms, those different skills and stuff like that. So, there's a time and place for everything. There's a time and place for, things to work collaboratively together, where you're undergoing, therapy, counseling, and doing medications. The situation is just going to be different for everybody. And, for anybody who may be providers, and again, this is just my own personal opinion and how I choose to be a provider. I want to establish early on with my patients, what's your goal? What are you open to? And just have some meaningful conversation about that and educate them, where you may identify the lack of education regarding things, and take it from there, because that person needs to be an active and willing participant in their care plan. Bottom line.
But you're doing online, you're doing more online stuff. Everybody's online. We're shopping online. We're having relationships online. Everything's online. We're really doing a disservice to humanity.
Yeah, we're disconnecting. We're teaching. Take a look at how everything's been, how technology has evolved over, well, let's just say, the last 10 years. Number one, let's start with just calling a business. Pretty much anytime, you call, all you're getting is an automated system. So you're losing that, interaction with people.
Yes.
From get-go, that whole disconnect right there. So technology is wonderful if it's used correctly and it's used for benefit, not to disconnect, but to be an additional way of connecting. When you're more typical means, such as face-to-face, are no longer working, or not no longer working, but maybe aren't at that moment available. I don't know, off the top of my head, I can't exactly think of the word, but everybody is using it as a disconnect, and social media does have a big play with that. But yet, if you understand social media to be what it is, it can be a little bit of an escape. Don't get me wrong. I go onto social media, I scroll through my Facebook and stuff, and I look to escape, because sometimes there's some really heavy things that are on my mind, and I need to disconnect for a minute, and take a look and use it for what it's for. And a lot of times it helps you realize, what? Everything that this particular person or these people are putting out there, their life is far better than mine. What the heck am I even fretting over? There, you have to be open to understanding that, but then you also have to realize that social media can be used as a resource. again, which is why I said that early on, for those people that are techies, I'm not very technologically savvy. I can make it work, but for that generation who's grown up on technology and they go in search of things, that's why I say that if that is what you're used to and that you're good at, use it. Find that resource for you to reach out and connect, because it can be beneficial. I mean, you take a look at, again, like you mentioned, because of, COVID and, a lot of people that don't wish to venture out of home, can't venture out of home, those that are at a higher risk of being able to seek some kind of care. Video technology has made it to where we can still help them receive the care that they need. It's just a different format. Is it absolutely 100%? No. Can things be lost in it? Absolutely. We can lose that human to human dynamic, which is still vitally important.
It is.
But it can still be a good resource in order to be able to, have what currently isn't maybe available for whatever the reason.
Right. I have to give you an example of what happened when I went to do my hair today. So I walked in to the receptionist. The receptionist was standing at the door with her phone, and she said, "Oh, go ahead and call your or text your hairstylist and let him know you're here." And she just went back to her.
People use it as an excuse to not have to do their job nowadays, unfortunately.
Yes, I'm hearing that a lot, that this whole COVID thing and the whole social distancing is a lot of people are just becoming lazy and they don't want to do their job. And you know what? Put down your phone, receptionist. Call my hairstylist on the thing like you do, and have her come up. How dare you? You know what I mean? Like, stand there and say, go ahead and text her and she'll come get you. No, a lot of people aren't doing their jobs. They're not answering their phones. They're just sitting there with this whole social distancing thing is getting out of hand. That's causing depression. It's causing a lot of people to feel alienated. Society is definitely breaking down. Okay. So,
here's another example. Take a look. I'm going to throw this particular population, out here because I am one of these people in this population. What about your hearing impaired? I am hearing impaired. As much as I choose to not want to talk about it, the fact is I'm hearing impaired. And I wear hearing aids. I have hearing aids in right now. So for the last 3 years that I have had to wear hearing aids, the first year and a half that I'm in hearing aids, if I can't detect a tone or I'm not getting something, I'm at least able to look at their lips and at least maybe be able to synthesize what maybe they might be trying to express to me. But now you take these people, me included, in this population of the hearing impaired, who rely on that face-to-face, that eye contact, and that being able to see your face. Now we have these masks. Stop and think about what type of disconnect it is for patients trying to receive care face-to-face and or on video technology. It is very, very hard because when I talk to people and we're wearing masks, I hear a lot of muffled tones. And I feel very bad that I constantly have to sometimes say, I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I'm not trying to be rude. I'm trying to understand and I'm trying to hear. But look at, and there are so many in the veteran population because we have a lot of elderly vets. We have a lot of younger vets that are coming back with hearing problems. Take a look at this whole, lawsuit with 3M and the hearing plugs for, veterans, et cetera, not to get sidetracked, squirrel, but this is a problem. And this can add to people's depression. This can add to their anxiety, their frustration. I mean, even me as a provider, I get frustrated because I feel I'm frustrating patients that I'm dealing with. You know, I get frustrated even here in my home. You know, I'm sure Matt, he gets irritated when I'm like, huh? What? Because if you're not in front of me or you're not speaking directly into an ear that I hear better out of, it is very difficult. I'm sure you've experienced it as well, you know, but it can be very frustrating. And those kind of things can honestly set people who are on edge. It can push them over the edge. So people need to understand that this is, and again, I'm not trying to make this political. I'm not trying to say do one thing, do another. I'm simply saying something as simple as being forced, required, whatever you want to call it, to wear a mask. There are people in this population, from toddlers to adults, that have disabilities that this could push them over the edge. Take for instance a child that's got ADHD. You know, they struggle with certain things with attention and stuff like that. Make it a little bit harder for them to be able to connect when connection is so vitally important. You know, there's
connecting with people. I can't stress it enough. I can't stress it enough.
Yep, we need
so,
to connect. We need to reach out. We need to speak up, and we need to support.
Yes. Let's give it a few more minutes, and then we're going to wrap it up. Let's just say that this topic was for the veterans and the mental health, and how we, as a community, need to understand and need to
support.
We need to not give up on anybody. I know there's a saying that says nobody gets left behind, and there's also a saying that says it takes a village. Those things are important. Let's not alienate each other. Let's stop creating walls. Let's stop the bullying. Let's stop all that. What can you say on, huh?
Get rid of the mental health stigma.
Let's stop stereotyping. Let's stop. As far as veterans, Candy, I have to say, I've never stereotyped them. I've never tried to say what they did was bad. I know that they're serving their country over there. I know that they're doing their job. They're trained to go over and fight and to prepare for death. That is not something to be taken lightly. These are our heroes, okay? Our heroes.
These men and women love their country. They love their country.
They do. Mm-hmm. We need to start showing respect.
We can't have
to start honoring. Yeah. We need to start honoring each other. Stop trying to alienate and cut off from the network that they've created. Okay? Let's not give up on our veterans. Let's not give up on our community. Okay? Let's not give up on our veterans. And that is what I want to conclude with. Let's not give up on our veterans. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we're going to continue next week. Thank you for the updates on the Kabul crisis in Kabul. Anything at all that you have to share? Any last words that you want to say on that, Candy?
No, I just can't stress it enough. Just if you're out there and you're a veteran, even if you're not a veteran, but specifically I'm speaking to the veteran population as well, don't suffer in silence. If you don't know where to turn, just turn somewhere and reach out. Even if the first reach out doesn't connect you, keep reaching out. Just don't ever give up, because you are worth it. You are worth it.
You are worth it.
Yep.
All right. Thank you so much. And that's going to wrap up our Serendipity 85 podcast. And we'll talk to you next Thursday at 7.
Yep.
And we'll touch base again. And again, thank you all the viewers that are watching, and all the viewers that are going to watch this tomorrow or the next day. Feel free to leave your comments. Get a hold of us. Candy, I have
one person. If we
What?
can reach one person, we can save one life. We can steer one person in the right direction. It's all worth it.
Yes, it is worth it. They're worth it. We're all worth it. All right. So everybody have a wonderful week. Have a wonderful weekend. And we'll see you all next week. Candy, have a wonderful night. Don't go away. I'm going to end this broadcast. I'm going to end this broadcast right now. And then I'll talk to you in a minute. All right. Have a good night, everybody. Bye.